It's been a tumultuous couple of days for the drivers of the US Open Wheel B IndyCar Series, but today they put that aside and they focus on the racing at a track relegated to the history books of the NTT IndyCar Series. Hello everyone, welcome along to Friday Night Primetime and round 2 of this 2023 Season 1 of the US Open Wheel B IndyCar Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by the one, the only Cam Roger. And Cam, after an interesting start to the season at America's National Park of Speed, Road America, we illustrate the diversity of IndyCar heading to a super speedway here today.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite tracks on the schedule, to be honest. It's such a fast-flowing track. It's going to be a big pack race, probably, with how open it is around this awesome autoclass speedway. And I think it's going to produce another great race. And as you say, just showing how we can quickly jump from the road courses into the speedways and how the car just seems to do so well with all the different packages.
Let's talk very quickly about the schedule, because there has been a little bit of shift over the last week with the news that dropped just a handful of days ago that the iRacing IndyCar community is going to be disrupted. Out goes Iowa for round 4. In steps Richmond, still 160 laps, but after that, instead of going over to Mid-Ohio, instead we go to the Red Bull Ring. Our last change, of course, is in round 9 when the Worldwide Technology Raceway gets replaced by the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. But still, this is looking like one of the more interesting schedules that the series is going to visit. But of course, Cam, it is a bit of a shame that next week at Spa-Francorchamps will be the final time that we cover this series.
Absolutely. Just a couple of races left with this car on the official side of things, which is a great shame, but I'm sure next week at Spa-Francorchamps, that's going to be a great event. So do get yourself involved in that. Get yourself driving. Let's get loads of splits and give this a good send-off for 2022.
It's always going to be fun, though, for these drivers. Still competing, just without the spotlight put down on them, of course. And what an interesting schedule they've got in front of them until March, when they head to the Tricky Triangle to close out their first season in 2023. What do we have in store today? Well, pack racing, yes, but this is a track where it's notorious for being pretty bumpy, and you can be quite evil to the rest of your competitors as well, Cam, because playing with the dirty air and feeding dirty air to your competitors is so important at a track like this.
Yeah, it certainly is. With how wide it is as well, the amount of lines that you can take, as you say, you can sort of move down across people, and as you say, really just work with the aerodynamics of the car around here. And that is one reason why it is such a important track, really, also to have your strategy planned of how you want to attack the race, because there's 100 laps around here, and we are obviously expecting a couple of, probably about 3 pit stops or so throughout the race as well. Also cautions coming into that, so there's lots of things that can happen. So do you want to go aggressive straight away, or do you want to sort of play it back and just see how the race unfolds?
We are aware of a few technical issues. We're going to step aside for a few moments. Back live from the Fontana Speedway as we get ready to go for round number 2 in this 2023 US Open Wheel B IndyCar Series. It's time to run you down through your starting grid for the 100 laps that lie in front of us. And we've got a showdown between some of the top teams here on the iRacing IndyCar ladder, and some new alliances as well, proving to be rather interesting. It'll be Robert Malechka for Powerslide Motorsports that brings us to the green. He'll be alongside Seb Alexander, the first of the Indy Alliance contingent, with new teammate Kevin Burrell, Chris Wilhite, and Jesper Orman, the rest of the top 5. Adam Crane for Satellite Racing and our 2022 Open Wheels Grand Prix winner rounds out row number 3, while starting back in 7th, it will be Andrew Marquez in the number 6 machine. He'll be alongside fellow Lionheart IndyCar Series competitor Matt Taylor. Eric Troiano and Matt Hollabo round out the top 10 with the bright pink and yellow of Nicholas Sudik alongside Jacob Reed, 11th and 12th positions. Mitchell Welker makes it into our field of 18 cars. He'll line up in the 13th spot with his teammate at the All-American iRacers, Evan Adams for company, Matt Wagner and Jason Wallet 15th and 16th, with Phil Kraus looking to go from the back to the front, not for the first time in 2022, with Frankie Francicia rounding out our field of 18 cars. You don't need many cars to put on a show. The one thing that drivers will need to be a little bit smart about here, Cam, of course, is with pack racing and wheel-to-wheel racing in general, you need to be there at the end to be able to be on top.
You certainly do. With 100 laps, you can't win it in the first 10 laps, but you certainly can lose it. Of course, the famous saying, as it goes. But you also, when it starts getting into that final third of the race, if it goes green to the end, you need to make yourself sort of work your way towards the front. Because even if you're sort of 10 cars back, there's still quite a lot of cars that you're going to have to overtake, and you can't do it all at once. So hopefully, this is going to be a very sort of good race that we're going to see. Hopefully some clean racing as well. It's a pretty good field out there as well. Loads of high safety ratings as well, which is always good to see when you come over racing.
Let's not forget that this track has a sister track on the other side of the US, the Michigan International Speedway. And whether you're at Michigan, whether you're at Fontana, 3, 4, and 5 wide in the final laps is to be expected. A dive below the white line to the apron coming to the checkered flag will be expected. 100 laps onto the board, 18 IndyCar stacked up as the pace car exits to stage left. Is Robert Malechka in control of the field? Friday night primetime is ready to roar once more, and we're racing at Auto Club. Robert Malechka able to build a bit of an advantage as we build up the speed and start to work 2 and 3 wide. Of course, it's going to be important for the Indy Alliance Racing with numbers in the fight to try and work together. But they've got Adam Crane trying to climb his way forward to the top 2 spots. Malechka will lead from Wilhite, Alexander, Crane, Orman, and Burrell at the end of lap number 1. But of course, it's all about settling into the rhythm now, Cam, and letting the race come to you.
We're going to see how the slipstream works as well through turns 1 and 2. Of course, this is these corners are quite open. They're not really that tight, so you can really keep the momentum going, and therefore we're going to see some massive slipstreaming and even overtaking around the outside of some of these corners where the Wilhite goes to the inside coming into turn 3.
Immediately trying to swap back and forth, and not expecting that to change too much. Mitchell Welker, one driver that had, I think, a pit lane start to get this one started. Of course, maybe expecting a little bit of drama with 2 laps in the books. That's not befallen us, at least for the time being. I think you are going to see just the reality of this type of racing with big packs and gaps not starting to build. A little bit of 3 wide with Jesper Orman down the middle and Matt Taylor riding the high line and climbing his way up into the 5th spot. But you will see a couple of cars, maybe like Jesper Orman, content to ride, save a little bit of fuel, because getting onto pit lane is pretty tricky here, and maybe the driver's thinking we'll go long and see who puts themselves in trouble.
Yeah, going long is always a good one as we go 3 wide across the start-finish line, as obviously if you go further, it leaves you out potentially to get a lucky caution or something like that, save a bit of time in the pit stops. But of course, that all needs to see what happens. We go 2 by 2 once again, coming out of turn 2. And one of the drivers who's gone down quite a lot is Biro now, down into 10th place after starting right at the front.
Yeah, and that's one of the good partnerships that we're only going to get to talk about for 7 more days, 8 more days at this point in time. Kevin Burrell of the Team Watson Racing Alliance, well, now aligning with the Indy Alliance Racing. And as Robert Malechka, our pole position winner, says, you know what, it's a bit feisty for me at the front right now. He's going to have to be careful that he doesn't actually lose track of the draft, because he did slow down monumentally. And, well, he'll now follow Phil Kraus in trying to charge his way up forward. A long way still to go, and not going to get too excited about what's going on right now. Matt Holliber has climbed his way 7 spots up into 3rd, and he's on the outside of Seb Alexander as we work right now. Not seeing anyone clear off as well. That's what we're talking about when we consider pack racing. 17 cars split by 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, interesting to see the games happening already, even in the earlier points of the race. Didn't really see Malechka dropping off that far. Thought he was going to do, maybe 5-6 places, something like that, go towards the middle. But no, gone all the way to the back. He wants to sit tight and try and see this race through to the end.
Still the teammates up front going side by side. A bit of 3 wide as they fan out on the run down into the final set of corners. Adam Crane ducked down low beneath Matt Taylor. This is, of course, a track where I don't want to say setup work is not important, because you are, of course, going to find time in setup. But when you strip off the downforce in general, almost 4 wide into turn number 1, you can have a little bit more close racing like this. You don't need to spend so much time dialing in the setups, where your setups do benefit from setup evolution, though, Cam, of course, is drivability and most significantly, how the car uses the tires. So once you get to the end of these long fuel runs, when you really put a lot of load into the Firestones, you've got some rubber still left to play with.
Yeah, keeping the tyres, of course, the right-sided tyres alive is important. You've got to be having the feel for the car as well. If you're not confident with the car, you're not able to keep flat out, you're not able to really push the car, you are going to be just going back and back. And of course, you can sort of stay with the pack with this draft, but you're not going to be able to push yourself forward. You're not going to be able to have some tyres to play with to push yourself towards the front and really take some risks, especially around the outside here, which can often be actually a pretty good line, but it seems like the mid to low line is the king at this moment in time.
The dangerous thing about getting to the high line on an oval is that if there's a crash that happens down low, 99% of the time it's going in one direction, and that is up the track into the path of anyone who's trying to stay out of trouble, quote unquote, by riding the wall. I don't know about you, Cam, but I actually find it more treacherous to be on the outside than down low, even if you're struggling for grip.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also the long way around as well. So you've got to be really being committed to use the speed. Otherwise, you're just losing those meters on the outside. So yeah, it can be a bit of a difficult place to be, but sometimes that's the only option. If you get a fast group of cars holding that inside line the whole way around pretty much, then maybe not coming up the track too much, then they're really sort of blocking off your overtaking opportunities. So sometimes you do have to work together. But as you say, there are teammates out there who will be trying to help each other get towards the front. But as you see, actually, just sort of ahead of us, there's drivers moving up and down to the different lines to try and block off the different lanes of cars coming forward.
And it's in stark contrast to what Kevin Burrell is doing right now. Pretty content to ride the line that he chooses, just finding a little bit of clean air on the nose. 10 laps about to be in the books, and if you're wondering, is this sort of racing relatively easy? Well, at this point, yes, drivers aren't forcing the issue too much, they're just trying to stay out of trouble. Robert Malechka has jumped into our Power Slide Discord to let us know that he's got Phil Kraus for company, and it's a lot more fun back in the field. So if you're worried about Robert Malechka, don't worry just yet. Jesper Ullmann, now the leader of this race, alongside with teammates Seb Alexander and Chris Wilhite. Adam Crane, Nick Sudik breaking up the Indy Alliance Racing party, though, at the very front of the field. Of course, I love these perspectives that we get with these onboard cameras, because you see the lines and the way that the drivers are trying to find clean air. What we don't see, Cam, is the in-car adjustments, front and rear anti-roll bar, and of course the weight jacker to find that little bit more comfort.
Yeah, that would be a great thing to see if it was sort of a clicker at some point. Maybe that can be implemented even in the real life world of things as well, because that is a great thing. But that's something that drivers, as you say, just have to feel out as the car changes throughout the stint. Not only the tyres wearing, but of course the fuel load coming down as well. That really change the balance of the car, and the balance is really the biggest thing. Are you going to be wanting it to push on the front, or are you going to want it to be loose and have the rear come round a bit? Obviously, it's just the slightest of margins here as well, but it's so important, especially when you get into the dirtiest of other cars and how it handles with that, because as we said, you've got to have the confidence to try and stay pinned on the throttle and really place the car where you want it.
Yeah, to speak of the in-car adjustments, as I believe was Evan Adams who's trying to get down to the low line a little bit further back in the pack. But Connor Daly, I think this was back in 2020, right? Of course, when a lot of the IndyCar drivers jumped on over to iRacing and were trying to find their sea legs. But he was streaming and was making comments about how he was struggling to figure out the weight jacker on the ovals on iRacing. And so someone popped into his chat, I think it was Nicholas Sudik, in fact, who runs in 6th position here, and said, well, all you've got to do is slam the weight jacker up on the corners and then down on the straights. And Connor Daly was like, really? That's what we do in the real world. It's just a lot easier for us because we have software that basically helps automate it for them, whereas here in iRacing, it's a lot easier now than it was maybe 5 years ago, where now you can set rotaries, and so it's one click of a button. Before, you used to have to click the button 40 times in each direction every time you wanted to make a change. But that's those little things that we talk about, where drivers will find whatever advantage they can, whether it's in the real world or the virtual world of motorsports.
Absolutely. There's literally thousandths of a second as well, sort of added together that really make the difference around these tracks. Because actually, you see how close the cars are together. They're literally doing the identical lap times with the gaps and distances not changing too much, but it's how they are then controlling the car to do those lap times, how much they're pushing on the car. And if you can make it that little bit easier for the cars around the corner, not wear the tyres out that much, but then, as you say, then on the straights, you change it so it pitches the car slightly differently. You go slightly faster on the straights as well. That's obviously something that these teams will have advantage of. They have so many drivers to test these things out and to work out exactly what setting to put.
I was very much of the opinion that oval racing was just turning left about 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago that I still somewhat had that opinion. It's thanks to iRacing, it's thanks to this Dallara IR18 that my opinion on that has changed. And of course, don't forget as well, VCO Simi Awards on the 26th of December, I think is at 6 p.m. CET. Best Oval Racer is now a category that we celebrate, and Casey Kerwin is one driver nominated in that, but also nominated in our Best Esport Racer of the Year category after winning his eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series Championship. Speaking of that, by the way, there are certain drivers who, as they look forward to 2023 and are trying to figure out what they're going to do competitively in terms of focusing their competitive energies. I'm quite curious what the future will hold for the Jason Brophy side of things. Of course, the crew chief for Matt Busa in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. I get the distinct impression that he'll be able to spend the few minutes that he was still able to focus on IndyCar, now focus even more on eNASCAR, and it's going to be interesting, of course, to see how it goes for him. His teammate Phil Krause has not really worked his way through the field. Cam, I know you're relatively new to the iRacing world, but Phil Krause is a name that you've seen in other simulators competing in these IndyCars.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, used to drive for me back in 2018-19 when I had a team myself on different platform. But yeah, so I definitely know him very well, and it's good to see his progression as well as a driver, especially the last couple of years in this IndyCar. He has just been such a a great driver. Obviously, there's a lot of great drivers out there now, but he's really improved over those years, and it's good to see that he's getting himself towards the front. And I wouldn't be too worried about him sitting back there. You see the likes of Malechka there down the back. They know if you can stay a little bit further back, save that fuel, you're still going to be there at the end. There's still 80 laps to go, remember. And sometimes you're saying about the oval drivers being quite a big thing, because not just about the physical driving, but the strategic element of oval racing is really what sort of gets my interest with this. It's not just about the fastest driver necessarily, it's about the smartest driver as well.
Absolutely, and you go back to even Texas with the second race, was it this year, in the NTT IndyCar Series? Scott McLaughlin, of course, won at St. Petersburg, as many know, delighted me. And then I was ready for two in a row, and then suddenly here comes Joseph Newgarden on the final lap of the race, using traffic to his advantage to sneak the victory away from his Team Penske teammate. It's all about those dramatic moments, making the right decisions at the right time. And I will also point out, for the case of Phil Krause and anyone in the private label team hype, they just have to wait and see if they survive a cycle, not just of pit entries, not just of getting into their box safely, but of getting off of pit lane as well. Final couple of times I might get to make these jokes at the expense of the private label team hype. They won't mind too much given what a blockbuster year they've had. Of course, Phil Krause winning 11 of 22 races on his way to dethroning Adam Blocker as the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series champion. Seb Alexander leads at the front for the Indy Alliance Racing program, with Jesper Orman and Chris Wilhite, his teammates, tucked in behind. Adam Crane for the VRS Satellite Racing Camp in fourth, with Nicholas Sudik, Kevin Burrell, the rest of the top six. They are single file. It's a little bit more action-packed behind them, though, as we finish up 22 laps of the 100 scheduled. Burrell down the middle with, I believe, Andrew Marquez trying to work down low, and the blue and red machine that you're not going to miss. And Kevin Burrell sailing around the outside. He's going to throw a challenge on Nicholas Sudik in the 4.
So he's got a good run there, out down the back straightaway. Is he going to be able to drop in? No, he's going to have to lose a bit of time now on the outside. Got Marquez still there, trying to hold it down on that inside line, but Sudik just ahead of him, so slightly blocking him a little bit. Not able to go the full speed, but Burrell trying to drop down, just gets there in front of Marquez. You can see this front pack really holding the inside line, and the guys behind trying to go to that outside line, trying to make something happen. As Martin Burrell now trying to go around the outside of Sudik through turn 1 and 2, using a lot of overspeed. Might be able to drop down there as well, up into 5th place.
Out to reach the quarter distance point of this race. Not yet into the pit stop windows just yet, though. Expect that in just over 10 or so laps time. First cycle down on towards the pit lane. Matt Holloway and his teammate Evan Adams tucked up on that outside line with that distinctive eagle down on the front. Holloway's going to abandon his teammate momentarily and pick up the draft. And Nicholas Sudik just a little bit further down the road. And I want to just celebrate what a fantastic looking car this is. I don't know about you, Cam. I was very much unsure about halos and aero screens. They've very much proved their worth in terms of safety. But I really do think that with the aero screen, the IndyCar looks like a jet fighter right now.
Yeah, I love it as well. Obviously, when it was introduced a few years ago, it was very controversial as well, of course, with the halo on the Formula 1 side of things as well. But the head protection is, of course, needed. But I do think that this is the better looking of the two options, and it really sort of flows in with the car as well, and of course with the angle of it, trying to mimic the front nose. I think it's worked out pretty well. And as you say, the safety impacts of that as well is just something that you can't really sort of let go of. So it was definitely a needed thing, and I'm glad that they've done it in a good-looking way as well.
Yes, and we'll see what the future holds as well. Of course, this added quite a bit of weight and adjusted the center of gravity of the car. Drivers like Alexander Rossi have been vocal in the fact that they don't like how the aero screen has impacted that balance, and maybe moving forward, new chassis on the horizon, hopefully. Might see some weight savings to be borne down to the cars itself. He's not racing in this field today, but given that he has officially announced it to the rest of the community, I think it's only fair that we give some props to the certain Adam Blocker, I think 11-time champion of this now renamed US Open Wheel B IndyCar Series, but after a couple of years working in the IndyCar paddock as part of the Chevy engine program, worked in 2021 alongside Callum Ilott for Junkos Hollinger Racing. He's got a bit of a promotion for 2023. He'll be alongside Joseph Newgarden in Team Penske as their official engine engineer, and it's great that our community has plenty of ties to real-world IndyCar, and it's great that someone who's so significant and so frequently active in our community, Cam, is getting that opportunity in the real world.
Yeah, it's great to see the gap closing between the two, and as well, you see plenty of real-world drivers in the off-season, especially this time of year. You'll see them out and about across the iRacing service, of course, on all different categories that there are, because there are quite a few. So do obviously look out for the real-world drivers, and do give them the respect that they deserve. Don't invade the space too much, because they want to keep coming back, and it's great to see them supporting the simulator as well, because they know it's such a good way to sort of practice your racecraft as well, even if it's not quite the same on the physical level. The mental side of it is still very similar.
Yeah, and Blocker actually was just, of course, in Argentina with the Junkos team as they had that amazing little road show for IndyCar. It's a fantastic turnout. Agustin Canapino was behind the wheel of the Dallara IR18, and they had some fascinating conversation as Nicholas Sudik says, well, it's 3 wide and no longer an Indy Alliance racing party at the front. It's a new leader at the end of lap number 30. Nicholas Sudik in the 4, in front of Will Hite, Taylor, Alexander Burrell, and Jesper Orman. I have a feeling, though, as we enter into this pit stop window, about 10 laps or so, like I said, from getting into that, we are going to see more drivers trying to work their way to the front and putting themselves in a slightly better situation to get onto the anchors and dive to pit lane.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how quickly these positions change. Of course, we saw Burrell trying to get to the front, but then he dropped back a little bit. And one of those cars he overtook at the time was Sudik. So Sudik went backwards, and now he's gone forwards again. Because you can just see just the way you can use the slipstream, use those outside lines to try and make something happen as he comes across the line to lead a lap around here. Will Hite trying to get closer and closer in that second place, but it's actually Burrell coming to the outside now, trying to go around the outside of both of them, maybe able to drop into that third place. And, actually, Sudik moves up to him to give him the slipstream as well, down the back straightaway.
Yeah, maybe in this case, it's not the case with Burrell and Will Hite being teammates, but the enemy of my enemy is almost my friend at this point if I'm Sudik. I don't want to allow a 3-car Indy Alliance train at the front. Sudik almost up into the wall, though, and he's really checked up the momentum of Adams and that bright yellow and black car behind him. I could hear the nervousness in your voice there, Cam. You thought he was headed with a one-way ticket up into the wall.
Yeah, he's getting, when he gets out so wide there's just so much less grip. You can see how much darker it is on the inside where all the rubber sort of goes down into the tarmac. It really gets more grippy there on the racing line. So going up high is such a big risk, but Morel now getting quite a big run actually towards the front. Almost half a second clear of the top 5 as we come into that pit window. That could be a big factor in getting out safely on the pit exit as well.
factor. Who saved the most amount of fuel? Hypothetically, you could go as far as, I think, 43 laps here based on what we saw in the Lionheart IndyCar Series finale just a handful of weeks ago, but we're officially at the 1/3 mark of this race. It is going to fly on by. Only 36 more minutes if we go green flag racing from here to the end of this one, and I knock on my RaceSpot issued block of wood when I say those cursed words. That is for sure. We've had the 3 wide, we haven't had the 4 wide just yet. Of course, the likes of Adam Crane, Phil Kraus, and Robert Malechka still hanging back. We mentioned Mitchell Welker with his pit lane start. He is losing time every single lap, but it's only a couple of tenths here and there. There you see the All-American iRacers with Project 2, number 12, teal, black, and yellow machine. 11 seconds back from your leaders. Hey, he's praying for a caution to come out here in the pit stop cycle.
Yeah, once you lose that slipstream, you just can't keep up. You're just on your own, pushing through the air yourself, and it's not obviously going to work out. But as you say, a caution just completely changes that. And we've seen that so many times on these oval races. As is that Adam dropping down, or Adams, I should say, coming into the pit lane already, as we that was the end of lap 34 that he came in, or 35, I should say.
Curious as to why he came in. Maybe there's something related to what we saw with Sudik having bit of a nervy moment. Evan Adams may be flirting with the wall a little bit too much. Let's see if he sits in the pit lane and grabs some damage repairs here in that number 14 machine. 7 seconds already and counting, and as that clock ticks up above 10, yeah, I would confirm that's likely some damage on his machine. So the field of 16 that was running is now down to 15, although having said that, Seb Alexander, the next car down onto the pit lane, he will be the one triggering the start of the pit stop cycle, of course, though, because he was running at the front with the clean air. And to confirm that, Mitchell Welker as well dives to pit lane. We're into the pit stop window now, of course, Cam. Who can go the furthest and who can try the overcut?
And also, how much time are you going to gain or lose on the pit entry and exit? It's so difficult around this circuit. And considering how sort of, in quotation marks, easy the actual oval is, the pit lane is so difficult indeed. As we get Ullman there to the inside to take the lead, as is potentially the in-lap for quite a few drivers, but they just got to get themselves positioned nicely to not have any tangles of anyone slowing down into the pit lane.
9.6 in the box for Alexander, 9.8 for Mitchell Welker. Total pit lane travel time, about 41 odd seconds. You do go a lap down pitting here. And as Townsend Bell would always want to point out on NBC ESN, it's into the danger zone for some. May get trapped a lap down if they are rather unlucky. Plenty of cars trying to hit maybe the lap 40 marker. Don't think anyone's, of course, going to be able to cut a pit stop from this race. We are looking at a bit of a splash and dash at the end, and maybe a few gambles in terms of someone trying no tires and seeing what they can make stick after that. Phil Kraus is up in the mix now. He's up into third and is trying to find his way forward. You said that it's important to be at the front to have the right positioning, but it's all about positioning yourself to get down low to be able to enter the pit lane when you want to do so. No one does that this lap around, though, and Malechka has joined Kraus in working his way forward as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to see just how the drivers like Kraus are managing the race. He sat back in sort of 13th to 15th place for so long in the opening parts of this race, but he's now getting towards the front. And as you say, maybe trying to get himself down towards the low line here. Let's see if anyone else holds it tight out through turn 4, because that would be an obvious one, as Ullman is certainly doing that, holding it tight and tight. Is that going to be coming into the pit lane? Was that just a distraction maybe? No, he does come in, as well as Burrell, as a couple of other drivers come in behind. Yeah,
Burrell diving down from that upper groove, not preferred through the field. He would have felt a little bit nervy as well, but he is able to execute that well and will tuck in behind his new teammate and work their way down the lane. So Kraus, Malechka able to go past lap number 40, along with the likes of Crane, Reed, Sudik, Marquez, Wagner, Troiano, and Francicia. So 9 cars will extend the stint just that little bit further. And of course, a race that has not seen any separation so far may get separated through pit stop execution. We'll try and track the likes of Alexander Wilhite as they try and merge with the likes of Ullman and Burrell. Jesper Ullman with a 10.1 second pit stop, trying to get as much fuel into the car as possible, I guess, Cab.
Yeah, and that could be quite a big thing, with also then how much fuel you have to take at the end, or even how many laps you're going to get as well. So sometimes going longer is going to benefit you, and that is why these drivers who stayed towards the back, Malechka and Kraus, we saw them staying quite farther back in the first opening part of the stint. But it's going to be Malechka, though. Even though he was one of the first ones to drop out, he did lead for a few laps. It's now going to be Crane coming to the inside towards turn 1.
It shows you just how important saving at the start is, and now be able to get the good indication of the gaps that Malechka's going to have. We haven't seen really any separation building in the main gaggle of cars that have already pitted from about now 7th on back. Here you see Sudik working his way off of the access road with some company in front of him as well. The only car that's been somewhat lost from the shuffle is Jason Wallet in that number 13, but here comes the rest of the 4. Kraus, Crane, Wagner, Troiano diving their way on in, and it does seem as though they were able to enter without any sort of major drama as the rest of the pack gets back on to the lead lap.
Oh, they certainly do. But of course, it's splintered out a bit. The pack isn't quite so big. We do have 4 drivers to rejoin back into this. And of course, we'll then have to work out exactly what the order is looking like, but it can change ever so quickly around here. As we're getting drivers obviously trying to come back out. There's Burrell there trying to work his way up back through the field as they obviously try and work their way. But you can easily jump down from 1st back to 10th and then come back up. But as you see, it's not quite a big pack of sort of 15-odd cars that we saw a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and to the point as well on fuel saving, basically all of the 4 have been able to go slightly shorter in terms of fuel time despite going longest on track. They'll filter down on the access road once more. Front of the field already though, we are starting to see the cars work their way through the corner. Adam Crane's going to be the one that leapfrogs his way to the front. And I think instantly Kraus and Malechka trying to link up and once again slide their way on backwards. Remember, Adam Crane and 3 or 4 other cars had made it to lap 43 or so. Not good enough to cut the pit stop out of the race, but good enough to only need to put 6 laps of fuel in at the end. 3 wide though at the front. Matt Hollabo now at the front of the field. The intensity is starting to rise.
It certainly is. And I wonder if that strategic games, Arjun, do you think some of those shorter pit stops will be people under-fueling the car to make sure they don't drop out this slipstream and that they come back into the pack?
Yes and no. I think the fact that you had 4 cars coming together means that I would probably be pretty happy to go out there and stay as is. There's the fill times, by the way, on the left side of the screen. Apologies for the blanks. I can fill them in for you. Chris Wilhite, 9.7. Seb Alexander, 9.6. So basically everyone in that sort of a 9-second ballpark with the 4 that pitted the last able to short fill. But I think there is very much the opportunity here to make it to maybe lap 90 or around that mark and think about not taking tires. It's a gamble. Is it a smart gamble? That will be the question. And never trust a commentator's maths is one of Lewis McClade's frequent refrains, Cam. I'll share you one of mine. Never trust a commentator's strategy either, because we're usually wrong on that too.
Yeah, it's hard to predict what these drivers are going to do, of course. Multiple teams out there, and most of the drivers, of course, going for the win themselves. So some of them might be a little bit cheeky, even compared to some of their teammates that want to try and get this win. But you can see the pack starting to work their way back together. You can see Sudik there, all the way down in 12th now. He was one of the leaders as we saw came into that pit stop cycle as well. So they need to try and work their way up. There's a little bit of a gap forming between Reed and Kraus of half a second between 9th and 10th place, which is, of course, something that they're going to have to push and maybe not save the fuel in the same way. Will Hite goes to the inside there to take back the lead as we're getting a bit more of a single file train at this point of the race. We saw it sort of moving all over the place in that first part of the race.
Yeah, it's 13 cars now in this main pack for the time being. Jason Wallet and Frankie Francicia dropping off in the pit stop cycle. They're closer to Mitchell Welker now, so maybe the 3 of them can link up and have a bit of a fun fight to the end. Of course, we talked about Evan Adams. I do think he probably had a bit of damage. We'll try and get word from him when we can as he now links up with his teammate Mitchell Welker. Matt Wagner had a speeding on pit lane that has seen him had to return, I believe, to the pit lane to service 30-second penalty. He has also scored as 1 lap down at the time being, but all 18 machines are still out on track. And of course, I mentioned it at the very start of this race. I'll mention it again now. From Road America to Auto Club, and then across the pond to the Ardennes Mountain, where 7 days from today we're racing at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. IndyCar is all about adaptability, and the good thing about the virtual world, Cam, is that we can go to Spa, but more maybe interestingly, based on the rest of the season for the drivers, they're going to have a race at Brands Hatch Indy, which means basically just a 5 corners. They're also going to Rudskogen, which seems a little bit tight for an IndyCar, but I guess they'll have to find out the hard way.
They certainly will, and it's the tracks on the calendar, so they're going to have to try and work out what the best way is of racing those ones. And Brands Indy, that is going to be a very interesting one indeed. I believe it's even under 2 kilometers in length. It's so short, that track, barely any room to fit all the cars as well. Once they spread out a little bit on the road course section, it's going to be very intriguing when we get to those courses. But as you say, this series, this car in general, is all about being versatile. You have to be good, not just as a driver, but as a team, and the strategy on the different aero packages, on the different styles of circuit, and that is one reason why obviously we love it so much. And of course, you look at different tyres as well, different tyre rules that all come into that, and you've got to be on top of your game to really be at the front of one of these IndyCar races.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found this quite interesting from Romain Grosjean in terms of his transition. There's still some swapping at the front between Wilhite and Burrell, but it feels more like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for a certain 500-mile race where the leaders are just going back and forth, and there's not much excitement in why they're going back and forth. It's just about being the fastest that they can. We won't harp on it too much, but it's why I was quite intrigued to hear that Romain Grosjean made some comments through the course of 2022 that of all the drivers in America that he has been impressed with, and there's many of them that he has been impressed with, I don't want to say that the wrong way, but he called out one certain driver as being worthy of getting a Formula One, whether it's seat or test, that I don't know. But it's the only it's the only IndyCar Series driver that I'm aware of that's in this conversation that actually has the super license points. And it's a driver that had never been in an open wheel car until the end of 2020, and that is Scott McLaughlin. And I found that really interesting, Cam, the fact that he thinks that the level of adaptability that he's seen from Scott McLaughlin in this series was standing well in Formula One.
Well, it's a big change from what he was doing before.
Right.
And one of the biggest things he spoke about, as well as getting used to the left foot braking as well, which is a huge difference, obviously, to the sort of the touring car based that he was doing out in the Supercars Championship. So the fact that he's been that versatile to obviously come from the touring car style to go into open wheels, then of course to then go from the road courses, street courses, and the ovals in that car, that's so many different styles of racing. And he's going to be doing the Rolex 24 as well, I believe, in the LMP2 as well. So many different forms of racing. So as you say, if he can be at the front in all of those, I can definitely understand why Grosjean thinks that he's one of the drivers for that. And as you say, obviously taking super license points, because obviously that's a completely different topic that we won't go into about how they are allocated. But
yes.
The fact that he obviously has some points towards that could be a big factor. But I guess maybe the age thing might not be on his side with the way that F1 goes to such young drivers nowadays.
Yes, no, unfortunately that is probably not in his favor. What I would say is we talk about super license points, and the only reason Scott McLaughlin still has the 40 super license points that would make him eligible for an F1 super license is because he pulled a move on Romain Grosjean in the final race of the 2022 season that saw him grab a valuable couple of points that nailed him that extra position in the championship to give him the requisite super license points. Funny stories. I just like these sort of coincidences that sometimes rear their heads. Like you say, the topic of super license points is something that Romain Grosjean has already started to be vocal about, and that is definitely a good thing to see. Matt Holber down low, trying to challenge on Chris Wilhite and Kevin Burrell, as once again they'll go 3 wide at the front. You can see there's a bit of lap traffic in front of them that they will have to work their way potentially through in the near future. That's Matt Wagner riding by himself in that number 16 machine, but of course with just 1 lapped car and 13 or so of the rest already up to full chat, I don't really expect that Matt Wagner is going to try and hold people up too much. He'll just try and stay out of the way as much as possible. The rest of the car is just trying to ride around for the time being. Adam Blocker jumped in to say it will be 12 laps at the end for the likes of Crane and the 3 others that dived in at the very end of the window. I don't know if it's going to be worth it to not take tires, because 12 laps is still going to be about probably 3 or 4 seconds of fuel, I would assume, and tires can take you as much as 8 seconds. So it's only going to be a couple of seconds of an advantage. But I'm really curious about if anyone's going to make our lives interesting here, Cam.
I reckon someone potentially might try it, but as you say, for the fact of is literally just going to be, as you say, a couple of seconds, you're going to gain that back in the grip, and you're not going to be able to defend is the important bit. You might get the track position, but you literally won't be able to defend. People will be coming around the outside of you because they'll just be able to hold that extra speed that little bit longer on the higher line, potentially even if you block down the inside, down on the low line. So certainly I'd be taking tyres in that situation, of course, but someone might try, if you're a little bit further back, maybe if you want to get those extra couple of seconds to be in that fight, if you're a little bit further back, that is always something you can consider. As we're looking at Sudik, who's been on the back of this pack ever since those pit stops. He needs to find a way of getting himself back towards the front.
Well, still trying to figure out exactly what happened to Evan Adams, but I think we did wonder when Nicholas Sudik had his moment and got very, very close to the wall, what happened there. And I did wonder if Evan Adams was the one that was going to have a little bit of unfortunate circumstance as a result of that. Doesn't seem as though it is played out like that just yet. Coming to the end of lap number 60, so 40 laps still left to go. Of course, 10, excuse me, I was just looking at a different number, getting very confused. At the end of the year, it's not just that circuit, the Spa-Francorchamps trip that we'll make to close out our IndyCar era here on RaceSpotTV, but we're going to have a bit of fun in more ways than one. With the RaceSpot US 500 on New Year's Eve, it will be 2:30 p.m. Eastern for the green flag as IndyCar's finest will ball out once more in weather conditions that are going to be ideally suited to fun four-wide racing, Cam, but I think there's just this desire from the teams and the drivers to replicate what we had the last time RaceSpot saw these drivers compete at Michigan, with the last 3, 4, 5 laps of the race were some of the most insane laps that we've seen, 3, 4, and 5 wide. If you use the iRacing UI, you will see plenty of those clips featured in some of the splash screens as well. It was amazing, and these drivers want to just do that one final time before they say goodbye.
Absolutely, another great venue to round out that as well. And 500 kilometers in that case, not miles, but still plenty of laps to have a great round off of the year of 2022. But also this car as well, as you say, is going to be a great afternoon of action. I believe is it 2:30 ET as well. So definitely a nice time zone, both for the American, also the European side of things. If you want to get yourself obviously involved in that one, get yourself on the stream, because that one is going to be obviously very interesting in more ways than one, both on and off the track.
Yeah, it will technically be the 1st of January where I am, so I believe I might have to spend the entirety of the broadcast calling it Redacted Car, and at least on my screen it's just going to be a bunch of pixels instead of Dallara IR18s going back and forth. Will Hype-Burrell still at the front, Alexander, the rest of the Indy Alliance racing 1, 2, and 3, with Jesper Orman making it 4 of 5 inside of the top 5. Again, remember, they are the only team to have numbers in this fight. They'll be able to work together coming to the very end of this race and try and strategize how to box out the rest of the competitors. It's still a 13-car train, though. It is anyone's game with that extra pit stop cycle still left to play out. It's not just this IR18 that we're going to say goodbye to as well, Cam. I think that's one thing that has been somewhat missed, is the fact that the DW12 and the IR05, the 2 previous generations of IndyCar, still get plenty of use. We've broadcast both of them here on RaceSpotTV here in 2022. The IR05 with our classic IndyCar series, and that DW12 with the Lionheart Speedway series. It's great that we've had these 3 generations of IndyCar, and at least for the time being, drivers will still be able to enjoy them, just not in the public eye.
Yeah, they are 3 amazing cars as well. It's going to be a huge loss from that side of things. But yeah, it is a shame actually that's all 3 of the cars, because even DW12, such an iconic car as well, and really did big things for the brand, and of course really was what shaped and morphed into what you have on your screens today as well. So very, very iconic, and of course, as you say, very well used indeed, liked by teams and drivers. Bit of a shame that, as you say, from the sort of the public side of things, that is going to be leaving. But of course, we just sort of need to enjoy the final races that we have with that, and just really try and show off what they can do. As we're getting Wagner here, just trying potentially to get out of this fight, but he's setting to have a lot of cars coming past him in the next couple of laps or so.
Yeah, it's going to be important for him to just run a line and stay out of trouble. He will try, of course, and stay on the lead lap, you would think, maybe, until the closing stages of it, but for those maybe new to IndyCar and are unsure etiquette with blue flags, you're allowed to fight to stay on the lead lap. It's expected that you are going to fight to stay on the lead lap. That's what caused our dramatic finish at Texas. Matt Wagner already 1 lap down, though. Likely not to post too much drama as he now gets up to the high line and will let them all filter in down low. That's one thing that even I sometimes still get tripped up about in IndyCar, is the fact that if you are one lap down, coming from someone who grew up with Formula One, where blue flags are the death knell for your race, get out of the way, you are a slow man is what blue flags mean. It's quite refreshing in some ways, I think, in IndyCar that you don't have that and you are incentivized to try and stay on the lead lap cam.
Yeah, I guess obviously it's a more of an important thing here because the laps are so short, and in some ways it's so easy to go a lap down, especially with the pit stops and things like that. Whereas in F1, if you're a lap down, yeah, your race is pretty much done because you're pretty slow, as you say. But I actually like it from that side of things, especially when you're just one lap down and how important that lap can be. We've seen cars even be a lap down and come back to win the race if the situation comes around with cautions and the like. But as you see here, just slowly but surely he's dropping further down, and of course this does break up though the little battles in that field, and can always splinter that just a little bit. But the top 3 or 4, they're starting to obviously get in a bit of a rhythm with how they do this. Is Will Height and Burrell just swapping places again and again, and it seems to be that they're pretty happy with this, but at some point they need to start fighting.
Yes, Robert Milechka has jumped into our YouTube chat, by the way, to reassure you that, sorry this is boring, I'll quote directly, sorry this is boring, we'll pick up after pits. So there is
about how it's not easy to drive on ovals, but he's sending comments at the same time.
This is unfortunately quite normal from Mr. Milechka, so yes, we'll see how he's going to fight this one out. He's got the #1 car in the session, which of course does mean he's got the highest I rating in the field as well, if you're curious what that is. 6,723 on the field, over 4,200. With 30 laps to go, is it going to pick up soon? Well, pit stops due momentarily for some, I do believe. Lap 37, the magic number in terms of clean air, and Chris Wilhite already at the front of the field has ticked on over to lap 34. In stark contrast to that though, Adam Crane went about 43 laps on fuel. He's only 28 laps into his run. Expect him to go at least 16 plus laps from here to the end. Major strategy diversions up on the horizon. Which one is better? That's what we'll hear to find out. Remember, 18 cars whittled down to the 13 left in this leading group with 1.8 seconds separating them. And I do think you want to trust the word of Robert Milechka here. Although I do wonder, his YouTube name is Yawn. I hope he's not falling asleep back there, taking it easy.
Yeah, certainly in some ways a little bit easy in terms of you're literally just turning a little bit left and straight, but it's the concentration that you have and the precision they need. Ooh. Is that already people coming in? This is going to be obviously a lot.
Oh, and Seb Alexander has blown the pit entry. That surely is a speeding penalty for a car that's been up at the front of the field. We've talked about the treachery of pit entry, and there is a perfect illustration of just how difficult it can be with limited downforce in this configuration on the speedway. Alexander pays the price.
Certainly does, because going back into pit road is not what you want to do at a normal track, let alone a track where you can basically go a lap down from that. So that is almost race over, race ending at this point. Even though we're just getting towards the final quarter of the race, it's going to be hard to come back from that one. So that's a shame, but that just shows you how difficult it is. And of course, you were saying about the downforce, but also the brake kit around here. You're obviously not going to be having the biggest brakes because it's just extra weight, and also they are stone cold by the time that you get there as well, because you've been flat out for so long with all the air going over.
And to your point on the brakes as well, specifically for these sort of races, and specifically for the Indy 500, as we're going to take a look at the onboard replay here, as you'll get the sense of winding off the bankings, trying to load onto the brakes, just how difficult it is. And well, he's lucky he doesn't run into the back of his teammates in so many ways. Had already locked the left front up before the four-wheel lockup, and perfect illustration of that. But sometimes they actually will make sure that the brake pads themselves are resting as little as possible on the brakes, on the wheel, so that there's no drag, because 99% of the time you're not using those brakes. More cars down onto pit lane. Burrell and Troiano able to execute without too much drama this time around, but 25 laps to go, and already one of our contenders 2 laps down, with the rest still waiting to dive down to the lane.
Yeah, you were saying drivers may be trying to avoid taking tyres, but I would say it's probably a bit too long, isn't it? You're just going to lose too much time staying out for the few seconds that it's going to be. So we do expect all the drivers coming in this early potentially to take those tyres.
Yep.
And of course, that is going to be an easier fight to the end because they will just be able to push them a little bit harder. There's more drivers now coming in to pit lane. Hollibo and Marquez as well join the likes of Burrow and Troiano, who are now leaving the pit lane. A lot shorter, just 8 seconds for this stop.
Yeah, so, and that puts it in context, right? It was 9.6 seconds for the full 35-lap run. For a 25-lap run, they're only a second and a half shorter. It's all about the time to take tires in those specific cases. Hollibo, Marquez, Wallet, next 3 cars down onto pit lane. We are 4 wide, fanned out on the run down into turn number 3, heading to 20 laps to go. Doesn't look like anyone takes to pit lane this time around. It's Taylor, Orman, Kraus, Crane, Reed, Malechka, Sudik, the 7 at the front of the field, as once again, a number of cars left in the danger zone. A caution flies now, and they'll be trapped 1 lap down. Malechka slid up the track there and had to get out of the throttle to avoid running into those on the outer line.
As we go 3 wide into turn 3 and 4, some moves definitely starting to be made. They're down on the low line. Is he going to be coming in potentially, although he did go a bit longer in that first run? As actually, no, they just stay on that low line. As we're now seeing, obviously, changes to lead. Malechka there getting back to the front, and it can so easily change as he's getting Phil Kraus now diving to the inside of him in towards turn 1.
At this point, I think it's Jesper Orman who is going to be the next onto pit lane. He is 39 laps into his fuel window. Expect him in the next 5 laps, you would say. Also in on that lap, maybe Matt Taylor in that number 10 machine for Madworks Motorsports. And then a handful more laps before we see maybe Jacob Reed, Nicholas Sudik, and then Phil Kraus will be one of the final cars to come on down before Adam Crane, the very final car, likely to come in with Franchicha, who is no longer, of course, in this lead pack, but still technically classified on the leading lap. 20 to go. Kraus, Malechka, Taylor still running at the front 3. Lionheart IndyCar Series veterans at the very front of the field. Those that have exited pit lane have all been able to link up with one another, and that's important. Wilhite, Burrell, Hollibo, Troiano, and Marquez will be able to slingshot around with one another and build the speed up. Yes, they're losing time now, as that's an interesting call from Adam Crane. Last to pit in the first sequence of pit stops, diving in with still 18 laps to go.
Yeah, I guess it means his actual stop time now is going to be a bit shorter because he will still have some laps left in the tank, which could potentially be a benefit to him, as Franchicha there also coming down pit road, as well as potentially some others at the end of this lap. But you're right, I was wondering, now that we're at a point where these guys are staying out for so long, the people who just made a stop have been out for so long to get back up to speed as well. Who's actually going to be quicker? These guys are on less fuel, but they're obviously on the older tyres as well. So I wonder if there's a little bit of a pace difference between them. But of course, it's literally going to be a 10th or so a lap, but that 10th here and there can be so important.
It's a 10th in the favor of these cars, if we're being honest right now. 32.4 last time by for your race leader. Leader of that second pack, 32.6, so maybe even 2/10. And Jesper Orman and Robert Malechka are going even faster in comparison to their lap times. Still not seeing them in just yet. Orman, though, does dive in with a Reed and Taylor potentially as well. And we do have drama on pit entry. Jesper Orman, a second Indy Alliance racing car to have drama down on pit entry. And that's one beaten up Dallara IR18. That's Orman's race in the dustbin.
And considering that's the left-handed tyre, but he was on the right side of the track where the wall is, has he hit the back of another car there coming in as well? That could be a big factor.
He may have, because Matt Taylor is shown as being relatively slow as well. Not sure if that's related. Matt Taylor has spun on the back straightaway, and the caution has flown with only 4 cars left on the leading lap, but only 2 yet to dive down to pit lane. Robert Malechka and Phil Kraus will restart 1 and 2 with potentially 11 laps to go. And what had been a caution-free race until this point, with 2 moments of madness, maybe, just causing fireworks to the end.
And the drama comes when the pit lane sequence comes into effect. Pretty crazy times as we're getting that a DNF there, or at least towing back to the pit lane. For now, we will have to see if he can try and get back out. But of course, the caution could be so important with how this race now works out. And that just shows you why staying out can sometimes be of benefit if you have the capacity to do so, as these laps, of course, are going to be counting down quickly by the time we go back to green flag racing.
So if you're curious how this will play out, Malechka and Kraus, of course, still yet to pit. They'll dive down onto the lane this time by, and it will let Wilhite, Birel, and everyone through Frankie Francicia to wave themselves past the pace car and get back onto the leading lap. Seb Alexander, Evan Adams likely to get one lap back. They will still be, of course, trapped still one lap down from the rest of the field, given they are +2 right now, but it's not going to be a 2-car fight. It will still be a 13-car fight, just with Malechka and Kraus at the very point. And crucially, if we were discussing the possibility of gambles and drivers not taking tires, that's out the window now. You're all taking tires. Here's what happened to the Indy Alliance Racing number 3. As he rolled off the banking, it looked fine, but he locks the inside front, and it spins the car directly into that tire wall, and Nicholas Sudik had an interesting view, that's for sure.
I was so confused how he hit the left side of the car on the right side of the track, but yeah, just doing a 90-degree spin there, and he's actually slightly unlucky that of where he hit the wall in some ways, because if it was a bit earlier, it would have been on the grass. But yeah, that just shows you how the braking on these speedways coming into the pit road is so important. And of course now the pit stop sequence coming through from Malechka and Kraus, and as you say, tyres will be taken, and it's going to be a massive fight to the end now. Everyone's going to be on low fuel, new tyres. It's going to be about 10 laps to go. It's going to be a huge fight.
Oh, this is going to be fun. An exciting shootout to the end. It's almost like it's setting up 3 and 4 wide to the end, and I do get the sense that we're going to have to be careful with our voices here, Cam, because even though it's maybe only 11 laps before we start again, it's almost guaranteed that we'll have some issues. Here's one of our graphics esports designed cars, by the way. As he just gets loose on the access road, trying to push as much as possible, and in running the back of the car up into the wall, the suspension would have broken, and that's why we saw him struggling so much trying to hold it. The caution had already flown. Now, this is the exact moment where the caution comes, and yes, I'm glad that we saw that moment. Thank you, EQ Merikal on production behind the scenes. That's a nervy moment for one Evan Adams.
Yes, having to go hard left is certainly not always what you want to do, but fortunately around this track, like many, there's that massive tarmac section on the inside of the back straightaway for him to do so. But yeah, that was certainly not the nicest place to have a spin. As you were mentioning earlier, if you have a spin down low, you always come up high going across the track, as here, of course, is Adams. Trying to obviously avoid, and that was he did have room to the right, but he probably made the best move there going to the left.
He still had a couple of cars up high, and so I think he just didn't want to risk it, especially being 2 laps down as he was at that time. Good call out of the All-American iRacers number 14. So here we go. Cars will filter around, and Chris Wilhite will speed himself back up and power himself around. Now, Wilhite will have the most worn tires in the field. Going to be interesting to see how it shakes up for him. Also, we haven't mentioned him other than the one brief glimpse that we talked about him today. Mitchell Welker, after his pit lane start, back in the field and with a chance of working his way to the front.
Yeah, I love this sort of racing. And even Phil Kraus himself won a race a couple of years ago around this very track, actually, on a different simulator. He was in the fence at one point, but managed to come back and take the victory on that day. I do love these situations when they happen. Of course, it's a little bit of a lottery sometimes, but that is why, to be honest, I love the oval and the speedway style of racing, because you just have to keep yourself in the race and give yourself a chance if there is a late caution. And it seems to work out for the likes of Welker, who could potentially get himself easily up into the top 5 once this all works out as well. So certainly it's a game of staying alive and trying to get lucky. And Phil Kraus is going to be loving this along with Malechka. Remember, they sat at the back in that first sort of 20, 30 laps of the race, and we're almost wondering, are they ever going to start pushing to the front? But this is why they've kept themselves clean and saved the fuel, which has then put them in this position.
Only had to see the pace car re-enter the track once. Is it the final time? Is it 11 laps to sort this one out? Phil Krause at the front will lead the single file restart as he picks up the throttle. Not really launching as much of a gap as Robert Malechka did on the initial race start, but it's all about building up that speed once more. And from there, chaos and insanity will be vitally consistent here at the Auto Club Speedway. Already some action back in the Packers. The cars one lap down, try and fight to be the best of those one lap down. Seb Alexander in the 17 and Evan Adams in the 14 track them at the back of the field. 2 and 3 wide, starting to build though in the mid-pack. Not yet at the front of the field, but already a new race leader. Chris Wilhite leads from Phil Krause, Robert Malechka and Matt Holliber as we start to shape up to go 3 wide.
As we certainly do, almost 4 wide even coming through turn 1 into turn 2, still 3 wide on the as we get to Phil Krause on the middle there as Burrell trying to work his way forward, or sorry, Wilhite I should say, as well trying to work his way forward as we're trying to now start blocking each other. Watch the drivers get more aggressive as we go 3 wide once again through turn 3 and 4. No risks, sorry, every risk I should say being taken by these drivers now. Absolutely nothing being left on the table. They're going to be going for this as we get to 10 laps to go.
So Malechka's the one that's most willing to run up high, and remember he's got the freshest tires to play with as well. Burrell will sneak his way to the middle, forces Holliber to concede for the time being. Burrell pinching down Phil Krause as well, all the way to the white line. I know why he's trying to do that. He's trying to cause Krause to burn up the rubber. But remember, 13 laps the difference on tires between Phil Krause and Chris Wilhite. Malechka now faints back down low because going up high is the bright red machine of Adam Crane, and that worked a treat for Malechka. He looks to the outside of Phil Krause and fights for the race lead.
The 2x2 coming towards turn 1. Phil Krause holds it down there on the inside line. Holliber trying to follow him through, but it's actually going to be Malechka there on the outside door, blocking off any move as Crane works himself up into that 3rd place. Wilhite drops down a couple of places. He's going to have to work in, but look at all the cars behind, getting the massive slipstream 3 wide for the lead.
This is going to be intense. Can we stay caution-free? That's the question. 4 wide through turn number 4. Who comes out on top in this roller coaster of a race? It's all up to the gambles that these drivers will play out now. You talked about strategy decisions. It's all about figuring out where you need to be coming to those final couple of laps in the race. Phil Krause, I think he wants to be down low. Malechka is still trying to figure that all out. Adam Crane, 3 wide, once again down the back straightaway.
But does he have the tyres to hold it on the outside line? Obviously, Malechka and Krause, the newest tyres in the field. They can keep it down the inside line, hold it tight, and just go that extra couple of meters shorter around the inside of this Auto Club Speedway. Crane still trying to hold it 3 wide. It's been almost a lap now, but you see he gets further back on the straights, but he just can't keep it in the corners.
Burrell doesn't want to take it 4 wide just yet. A bit of a slide back in the pack. Was that Jesper Orman who almost ping-ponged off a couple of cars? We stay caution-free for the time being. Nervy moments though as we wind towards 5 to go. Still 3 wide between 3 staples of this community. Holliber now the one, thinking about 4 wide. Mitchell Welker almost up into the top 5 as well. 6 laps to go. I'm putting you on the spot here, Cam. Who comes out on top?
I think as it stands, Krause, if he stays in this position on the inside line, he can hold it. They've done this for a few laps now, though, of course, it depends who gets the slipstream towards the line, if they can get just their front nose ahead. But as it stands, look in the corners, he can hold it down that inside line. It's working out really well, so getting almost 4 wide in the background. Welker's trying to come to the outside, Crane as well, as Holliber 4 wide into turn 3.
This is the show we knew we were going to see. These drivers want to go out with a bang. They will not go down without a fight. Krause, Malechka, Crane, Wilhite now the top 4. Welker almost slides down into the path of Andrew Marquez further back in the pack. Again 4 wide on the run down into turn number 1 with 5 laps to go. Crane in the middle, Holliber having to concede up high, Malechka and Krause still funneling down low with the cleanest and freshest tires of them all. They're jinking back and forth. The speed's in excess of 210 miles an hour.
Amazing how these drivers just have the ability and the awareness to obviously hold on to their car, hold on to their line, and not, as you say, ping-pong up and down. It's amazing to see as Holliber now comes all the way down to the inside line. He's trying to push Phil Krause through, trying to get himself up onto an inside line sequence. He knows the outside line isn't going to work, as now Marquez makes it 4 wide, as Crane as well, trying to get to that outside line, but somehow Krause is still holding it on as he's got a bit of a gap, actually, as Malechka tries to follow him through.
Yeah, no, Marquez now the one running up high, and he's got that bright yellow machine tucked up for company as well. It's crazy how close they're getting. Crane and Malechka may very well have rubbed wheels on the run down through turns 3 and 4. How much closer do you need to get? Well, these drivers want to see if they can be pixel perfect here at Fontana. 3 wide, about 3-4 rows deep. 3 laps to go. Absolute insanity right now, Cam.
Certainly is. Crane there, still trying to get back in the slipstream, but has to open out, go 3 wide once again. As Welker there trying to get himself up into a top 5. That would be amazing to see. As now getting other drivers like Biro and Sudik trying to get back involved in this. A bit of a run there on the outside line actually from Welker. Drops back a little bit through turn 4, but as you come to the line, we're going on to lap 99. 2 laps to go around the Auto Club Speedway.
It's still Phil Kraus that led at the line. Malechka pops his nose in front, though, as they work into turn 1. It's Nick Sudik now trying to run almost up in that 7th groove. 4 seams, but more grooves to really try and find. I have no idea where you want to be right now. I think Kraus is in the best position possible, but Malechka and Crane are gaining more momentum every single lap as the tires start to wear out. They'll be pinching each other as close as they can get with 2 miles left to play this one out. 3 wide, again, 3 rows deep, 2 miles left to go.
And this is your time to give everything. Do not lift off the throttle if you want to win this race. Final lap time as the driver is going to be pushing absolutely everything. We're getting so many drivers try and push their way to the front. Sudik on the outside. Kraus has got himself in a good position here with no drivers on his outside yet.
It was smart from Malechka, though, tucked back into the draft, and has he cleared Phil Kraus on the run into the final sequence of corners. 3 wide, and they're pinching each other as they run to the checkered flag. Holliber bodies Adam Crane. Phil Kraus down on the apron, trying to squeeze his way to the victory, but in a photo finish to the line, they wreck across the checkered, but by 1/1000th of a second. Give it to Phil Kraus for the private label team hype to grab the victory here in round 2 of the US Open Wheel IndyCar Series at Auto Club.
What a finish. So many drivers could have won that one, but Kraus hold that inside line for the last 10 laps of the race, using his newer tyres to his advantage to hold it down, keep the speed going there, and just really putting himself in such a good place. And that all started with his strategy to sit back, save fuel in that opening stint, which meant him going longer in the second stint and benefit from that caution.
1/1000th of a second. What does that look like? Well, you'll see right here, super slow-mo as Phil Kraus burns it down in victory lane, a place he's intimately familiar with here in 2022. The narrowest of noses, enough to grab victory in front of Barney the Flagman. I couldn't tell who won if you asked me there, but the iRacing automated race control has the tougher job to do. Phil Kraus for the private label team hype once again on top. Let's grab a look at your race results 100 laps later, and in the final broadcast oval race for these drivers, a show was put on. 1/1000th at the line between the private label team hype and Power Slide Motorsports. Matt Holliber gets up to 3rd. What a drive for him. Would have been one of the biggest movers if not for Phil Kraus electing for the last to first challenge. Adam Crane will maybe never exactly get why the strategy played out the way it did, but in front of Nicholas Sudik and Kevin Burrell, with Andrew Marquez, Jacob Reed, Eric Troiano, and Frankie Francicia rounding out your top 10 finishers, separated by less than half a second. At the end, Mitchell Welker drops to 11th, but he had fought his way back valiantly through what was a difficult race for him. Chris Wilhite, Jason Wallet, the rest of the cars on the lead lap, with Adams beating out Alexander 1 lap down, Matt Wagner finishing 3 laps down, Jesper Orman and Matt Taylor, the 2 did not finish in this race. Well, wow, oh wow, take a breath, and if you wondered what the RaceSpot US 500 may deliver to you on New Year's Eve, Cam, Auto Club in Michigan, our sister tracks, very, very similar. I think we've got a bit of a preview for the ball that will end things on the 31st.
We certainly do. And of course, a few more laps in that race as well. So great to see the drivers will ending off the year in style, ending off the car and the series in style as well. It's going to be a great send-off. And of course, a week left of the Friday Night Prime Time with this very car as well. So 2 great races coming up next weekend. Can't wait.
It's going to be fantastic, of course. Let's quickly grab a couple of interviews if we can. Let's not dawdle around too long. Matt Holliber standing by. Matt, you got a copy?
Yeah, you got me?
We got you loud and clear. So, my friend. What was that like at the very end when you were 3, 4, and sometimes I think maybe 5 wide almost perpetually?
Wait, I was 5 wide at one point? Jeez, I didn't even know. I knew I was 4 wide at moments, just trying to make that high side work, but I couldn't do it. So then, like, at the end there, I was just, I really don't have words to describe, like, what was going through my mind there. My hands are actually kind of still tingling a little bit after that one, just because of how exciting that was from the cockpit. Apologies for causing that wreck there at the end. I wasn't lifting, though. I was not freaking lifting.
I don't think anyone was going to lift in that situation. In your mind, was there anything anyone could do to beat Phil Krause? Because basically after the restart, he just painted the white line as much as he could.
Yeah, as much as I wish it wasn't this way, like, dude had tires. Him and Rob had tires, and there wasn't really much we could do about it. Yeah, that whole wave around situation, like, again, like, it's just they picked the correct strategy there, and it sucked for the rest of us, but hats off to them. Did Rob finish P2?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so it worked out for them.
1/1000th of a second at the line, by the way.
Holy crap.
Yeah, apologies for the language. Matt Holliver, thank you for joining us here.
I'm so sorry.
Great drive to third, and we'll see you hopefully for the US 500.
Plan on being there. Thank you, Arjuna. Thank you, everyone involved. I'm going to miss the heck out of this car. I know I'm still going to be driving it, but just like, man, take care, man.
I think Matt summed it up best there at the very end. Again, apologies for the language there. Let's see if we can talk to his teammate Evan Adams as well, because it doesn't look like Robert Malechko or Phil Krause decided they want to come and speak to me, so I don't blame them for that one either. But Evan, from your perspective, what happened to you that saw you have to come down a little bit early in that first cycle of the race?
Well, I think the problem that I had was that the set I had, it had all the downforce on it, but it wasn't very nice on the rear tires. I was skating like an ice skater in the last few laps of fuel. Then I got loose out turn 4, thought I was going to crash, managed to save it, but I ended up getting a speeding penalty. As you would say, Arjuna, I pulled a Jason Brophy.
Yes, okay, so we did get at least 2 Jason Brophies then, because Seb Alexander also got a speeding penalty. Jesper Orman did a Jason Brophy as well because he crashed on pit entry. So Jason Brophy getting thrown under the bus here. I'll ask you about setup. You talk about the setup being difficult, but what do you think a race like Michigan and the RaceSpot US 500 is going to hold? Because I think we're all looking forward to something similar over there.
Well, the setup that me, Mitch, and Matt were using were all on the same team. It started off as a Michigan setup for Indy Elite. We converted it to an Auto Club setup for Indy Elite. And so I said jokingly to Matt before the race, do you think we can convert this back to a Michigan setup? And his response was, no. I might be misremembering, but I think he said no.
Sounds like you guys are going to have some fun tweaking things for the 31st. Glad to have you in the field, Evan, and we'll see you on the 31st.
Looking forward to it.
Evan Adams qualified as an alternate for the Open Wheels 500 and stuck around to make it into the field. Looks like that's all our interviews for now, Cam, so I mean we can take a breath and we can look forward, focus forward. December the 30th, same time, same place, 8 p.m. GMT. We head to maybe one of the most famous tracks in global motorsports.
Indeed, amazing track. An amazing car as well. The 30th of December is where it's going to be, the final race, of course, for prime time with this car as well. It's going to be a great one, 8 p.m. GMT. Do not miss it. And get yourself racing as well. If you're a driver, get yourself involved. Get some splits up for the final week with this car.
It is going to be a 2-stop race as well, from what I understand. Tire conservation going to be interesting with how the primary and alternate strategy is going to play out. And Spa always does deliver. Brandon Treno delivered some chaos for us last time we were in the Ardennes Mountain. For now, though, it's time to say farewell. One more week of this US Open will be IndyCar Series. Then, of course, our focus will shift in the new year over to the IMSA iRacing Series. But for now, we will enjoy the Dallara IR18 while we can. On behalf of the team at RaceSpotTV, for our producer, Iku Merakala, for Cam Rogers, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you for joining us for another edition of Friday Night Primetime. We'll be back in the Ardennes Mountain 7 days from today. But what a show they put on today at Auto Club. Phil Krause once again on top. We'll see you 7 days from now.